Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for my least favorite segment, but I'm committing to it. Why You Know Review, where I talk about a series of releases that I either didn't really care for or I just didn't have the time or make the time to do a single review of, so I'm going to talk about them in brief here, go into my opinion a little bit, or what I perceive the flavor or the genre or the style of the music on these records to be, so that possibly if it interests you more than me, then you check it out. Or maybe some of these releases, they slipped past your radar and there's something that you would be into if only you had heard of it. So I'm just going to give it a little baby tiny mention here. Let's go. The new Braid album, No Coast. These guys are essentially an old school emo act who have records dating back to the 90s, emo and indie rock act, and I guess sort of maybe wanting to get back together just by a natural desire to make music, or maybe just by seeing the fact that there is kind of a resurgence in interest in emo and Midwest emo now. They have come back together and they have put together this new record. And to me, it's actually funny. I mean, I've been into emo and Midwest emo for a long time. However, Braid has not really been a band that I know that much about. However, the fact that they are coming out on these newer labels, or this label that sort of specializes in this stuff now, they're reconnecting with this new younger fan base for this music. So, you have a lot of people who are younger now getting into their older stuff and getting into this newer record too. However, this new record to me is about as disappointing as many newer emo and Midwest emo records are. I actually went back and I listened to their older stuff after hearing about this album and found it to be pretty fantastic, actually. It's interesting that this band has been overlooked in the way that they have been. And I don't know, I mean, I can't say I really like this new record. To me, it just sounds as bland as a lot of these newer groups. However, like I said, it's an excuse, it's a reason to check out their older stuff. But if you find yourself to be a younger person or even an older person who's enjoying this resurgence and interest in this genre right now, then I see no reason not to check this record out. I see no reason for you not to enjoy this new album from Braid. The new Jungle album, it's self-titled. These guys are from the UK. They are a pop soul, synth funk outfit. Really big songs on this record. A few strong singles that a lot of people have been championing lately. A lot of the songs on this record sort of remind me of Gangs. If you guys have heard of them, if you haven't, definitely check them out if you're into this Jungle record. But if you're into synth funk, there's better, more classic stuff to check out, in my opinion. I happen to think that the songs aren't really that sharp, aren't really that memorable. Nothing that people are going to be screaming about going into next year. And I don't know, it's just really the vocals that consistently I find to be pretty goofy. And given that Jungle is such a large group of musicians, I guess I'm not finding the songs on this record to be as instrumentally lush as I would have hoped. There's just something kind of underwhelming, either in the songwriting or just how light the instrumentation feels on this LP. Moving into now the new White Lung record. These guys are a punk band, I believe, from Canada. They had a record come out in 2012 that I thought was pretty good, but I didn't end up covering it or anything like that. But I was anticipating their next full-length release, especially since I had seen them live in between 2012 and now and thought it was a really good performance. However, this new LP of theirs just kind of sounds like a second-rate bar punk band from the 90s. I mean, just really weak songwriting all over this LP, in my example. Just nowhere near the level of ferocity of their past work. For people who've been riding with them so far, I haven't really seen a strong negative reaction to this record or anything like that. I don't think this band is massively disappointing anybody, but given the fact that they're on a larger label with this next record, I think they've kind of taken this opportunity to reach a larger audience and have kind of just delivered a kind of middle-of-the-road, run-of-the-mill rock and punk album, which, I mean, it isn't as exciting as, your kind of larger label debut should be, in my opinion. But if you're looking for an underground rock record with kind of a punk flavor, but maybe doesn't go too over the edge with the aggression, then check this out. Next, the new Strand of Oaks record, Heal. This album is sort of an Americana, alt-country folk rock record, and there are a lot of records out there like this right now if you're looking at artists like Phosphorescent or Kurt Vile. This is definitely in that vein in a lot of ways. Also, that new War on Drugs record too. Although a lot of those artists do sort of take Americana and bring it sort of a more atmospheric, somewhat psychedelic ambiance. This record, far more straightforward. Actually, I would say there's a bit of a synth pop worked into the mix too. Lots of Springsteen, maybe a little bit of Willie Nelson here and there on some of these tracks. I'm feeling an influence coming from that. This is Americana and heartland rock with a lot of grit, a lot of guts. It's just in your face. It's no BS. It's straightforward. However, I guess I don't find the more electronically tinged tracks on this LP to be that exciting, and I'm not really enthralled with the vocals that Strand of Oaks brings to the table. Not that they're terrible in performance, but I guess I'm not really sensing a really distinct character coming out of them. That would make this set of songs stand out against any other set of Americana songs out there. You know, sometimes when I'm listening to this LP, I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't know, I just sort of rather listen to Springsteen or something like that. But if you're in the market for another record in this style, do look into it. The new Matthewdavid record, In My World. Matthewdavid, if you don't know this guy, Brainfeeder affiliated producer, has some of the weirdest out there experimental hip-hop production that you will lay ears on. In some ways, I think he is stranger and more ambient in flavor than even Flying Lotus. But with this new record of his, he does a serious change of pace, bringing a ton of vocals into the fold, and not just vocals of any style, but sort of in an R&B and smooth pop soul style. But he brings it over this really trippy, strange production. Something in theory or in blueprint I think could be, or I think is really interesting. Could be really awesome, but in practice, I wasn't really that moved or excited by it. I think mostly because I don't really care for the vocals. I think the way they are performed is really grating, and I have tried this album on several occasions just because I like the concept of what Matthew Deere has going on, but in execution, like I said, I just don't really care for it. But if this clash of styles appeals to you, you kind of want to hear, you know, these R&B vocals thrown on top of this really strange, trippy, hip-hop influenced production, then do look this album up. The new Sage Francis record, Copper Gone. Sage Francis, seasoned vet at this point in underground hip-hop music. A lot of people throughout the years who might maybe in the 2000s have considered themselves backpackers were most likely very big into Sage Francis. And I do consider him a talented MC. I do think he has good flow. I do think he puts a lot of heart into his lyrics. However, personally, never really been a huge Sage Francis fan. I think he comes off a little melodramatic at times, especially on his more recent works, such as this album. There have been a lot of people who are hip-hop fans sort of wagging their fingers at me in the comment sections of my videos saying, "Shame on you, Anthony! Shame on you for not reviewing the new Sage Francis record." And I'm talking about it a little bit here. I'm going to say, if you're into underground hip-hop music, if you love hip-hop music that really takes the lyrical element of things seriously, then do look into this new Sage Francis record. However, for me, it's just not really my style. It's not really my taste. I'm not saying it's inherently bad or anything like that. I just don't care for my MCs coming off like every single thing they're saying is just so emotional or so powerful. And that is definitely a part of the appeal for Sage Francis. You know, it seems like everything that he's delivering has so much emotional weight to it, which is fine. It's just that for me personally, that kind of stuff, there's a sweet spot that it needs to hit in order for me to enjoy it. And this album is just maybe just slightly to the emotional side of that sweet spot. Though I will say there are people like Sadistic and like Greaves who go even farther than Sage Francis. You know, Sage Francis to me is much more palatable. Next, the new Pains of Being Pure at Heart album. Yeah, I haven't really talked about this either, even though I reviewed and enjoyed their previous two LPs. I mean, I love this band's debut album. They've recently undergone a lineup change, though Kit Berman is still fronting the band, still songwriting for the band, and the record sounds fine. It's maybe their cleanest record yet in terms of production, but I'm not finding it to be as punchy or as immediately poppy as their last full-length album. If you're into indie pop from the UK, from Glasgow, from the 80s and the early 90s. If you're into twee pop, just maybe a touch of noise pop, though that's more their early stuff than it is this record. I say check this album out, but if you have been a fan of the Pains Being Pure at Heart up until this point, I mean, maybe there just hasn't been enough significant change to their sound to justify this new record of theirs. Plus, I mean, being a pop and a pop rock group, I don't think the singles that came out before the release of this record really did much to start a fire of interest for this new album from the band. Maybe it's ineffective marketing, maybe it's just the singles weren't as hot as the singles from the previous releases. I still think it's a solid record overall, though just not as exciting of a pop experience as their previous LPs. Next, the new 68 album. This is a noise rock album, a post-hardcore album. These guys are essentially a new group from Josh Scogin of The Chariot and Norma Jean. And even though there are some elements of this record that I like, it's loud as hell, it's distorted. At times, some of the songs on here remind me of Nirvana a little bit. For a noise rock record, even though it is abrasive, I do like my noise rock to just sound, in performance, a little more chaotic, a little more just bursting at the seams, like it's barely in control of itself. The recording here is just maybe a little too tight and just down, sort of like an Every Time I Die album, which is not surprising given the connection that this band has to The Chariot. Next, the new Bleachers record. This guy is essentially the guitarist from the band Fun, a band whose newer output I haven't really cared for all that much, though it has earned them a lot of commercial success. And this solo record, this solo maybe one-off project, you know, who knows, maybe there will be another Bleachers record down the road. I do understand this project has seen some commercial success. I do think this is the most commercially successful project this guitarist has had outside of Fun. But I guess what I'm getting down to with this album is that it just kind of sounds like an old new wave record from the 80s, or just an 80s era rock record, which I do understand is kind of the point of this project, for him to indulge in that style in this era of music, obviously. But does he put his own spin on it, or anything that kind of just makes me think of him carving out his own niche in this style? Not really, you know. And aside from some of the lead singles off of this LP, like I Want to Get Better, I'm not really gravitating toward any of the songs on this LP. But still, you know, it's not really a slight against those singles, it's just a slight against this album as a whole. As far as those singles go, like I Want to Get Better, I think they're great singles. If you could only manage to drum up 10 tracks that are as electrifying and as magnetic as I Want to Get Better, I could see Bleachers being a pop project to reckon with. And finally, I will mention the new Big Freedia record. Big Freedia, she's, I guess, an MC and a purveyor, sort of a pioneer in the New Orleans bounce music scene, one of the bigger names out there right now, and so big that she could essentially go across the country touring and performing without releasing a new album of tracks in, I think, over a decade. I think this is her first full-length LP in over a decade. And, I mean, it's not a bad mix of tracks. It's not anything. I mean, even her older stuff, though, it's not anything I would listen to just kind of sitting here with headphones or anything like that. It's more music for a live setting, which is fine. And I think the newer production on this record actually fits that context even better, because it's louder, it hits harder, it's more bombastic. I think this is the new set of songs that Big Freedia kind of needed for that live setting, to break things up and just offer people something new when they go out to see her. And that's pretty much the Why You Know review for this month. What did you think of these records? Transition? You're the best. I gotta end this video right now, because I gotta go to the bathroom. You're the best. I love you forever.